Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this video. I am Infinity43. Now in my last video we spent some time looking at the Porsche GT1, so I thought for this one I'd stay in the same sort of category, same territory, and look at another winner of Le Mans from the 90s, the BMW V12 Lmr. Now if you want to skip the history of the car and go straight to the model, you can do that. I'll put the timestamp on the screen now. Otherwise, let's get into the history of this car and see what it's all about. BMW, in a racing context, are well known to GT and saloon racing fans. If you watch the AWS World Challenge or if you watch DTM or British touring cars over the years, you'll know what I'm talking about. A bit like the Porsche 911, BMW have been racing their street cars in some form or another for decades. Now less time has been spent in the more engineered classes, like prototypes or Formula 1. BMW of course did have a fairly successful F1 stint from 2006 till 2009 when they took over the Sauber team, but that's a limited amount of time. So when it comes to high-end endurance racing, things like GT1 in the 90s or prototypes, BMW poked their toes in the water firstly as an engine partner for the McLaren F1. They used their S70 V12 engine in the back of that historic racer. The McLaren went on to win Le Mans in 1995, but by the end of 1997 it was struggling against the new GT1s from Porsche and Mercedes, and so McLaren withdrew the car. Now BMW weren't so keen to throw in the towel, so they decided they would build a new prototype that they would race against their German rival manufacturers. So in partnership with Williams F1, who developed the chassis and the aerodynamics, the BMW V12 Lm was born. It was a classic prototype design with its open cockpit and sleek lines, and, being a prototype, it didn't require street legal versions to be built, unlike the GT1 races of the time. But unfortunately, it struggled. On its debut at the test day for Le Mans 1998, as part of the Schnitzer Motorsport team, the V12 Lm was noticeably off the pace, finishing 11th. They did manage to improve to 6th by the time qualifying was complete, but glaring performance gaps to Mercedes, Porsche and Toyota were very evident. And it got worse, unfortunately. Very early in that 1998 race, heavy vibrations were detected in the drivetrains when the cars were running at high speed, and so both cars were retired to prevent a massive failure or disaster or some catastrophic event. So BMW, Williams and Schnitzer decided to abandon the V12 Lm altogether and start from scratch with a brand new competitor. Thus was born the V12 Lmr. Similar to the Lm in chassis and engine, it had completely reworked bodywork, which personally I think looked far more attractive. Two notable changes from its predecessor the Lm was the moving of the cooling ducts to the top of the car to avoid ambient heat from the track, as well as a sneaky roll hoop just behind the driver's seat rather than completely around the driver. This was made possible by a loophole in the ACO's regulations, and it allowed for less drag when the car was at speed. And this time, the results were far better. The Lmr debuted at the Sebring 12 Hour, where it took pole and won. Onward to Le Mans, and here BMW faced fresh, strong competition in the form of the mighty Toyota GT1, the Panos prototype, as well as Mercedes, Nissan and Audi. These competitors had greater single lap pace due to their closed cockpit design, but it also meant they used more fuel. BMW managed to qualify 3rd and 6th for that race, and consistent reliability proved to be their strong point for most of the 24-hour event, just like in 1998 with the Porsche GT1. The Lmrs would assume the lead of the race as a number of their competitors suffered reliability problems, and in the closing section of the race it came down to the Lmr of Jochen Winkelhock, Pierluigi Martini and Yannick Dalmas, which was being chased by the Toyota GT1 of Ukyo Katayama, Keiichi Tsuchiya and Toshio Suzuki. I probably butchered those names. In the final hour, as the Toyota was catching the BMW, they suffered a tyre blowout at high speed, ending their challenge. BMW would enjoy a relaxing close to their first ever Le Mans victory. Now the Lmr continued to compete in the American Le Mans season for 1999, where it took 3 more wins but did not manage to secure a championship, constructors or drivers. BMW decided to turn their focus to F1 after 99, primarily as an engine supplier, and so the Lmr was given a swan song of sorts for 2000, competing once more in the American Le Mans Championship. With limited development and strong new competition from Audi, BMW did manage 2 victories but were otherwise defeated in combat. The race car was quietly retired from competition, not even attending the final race in Australia for the 2000 season. I was not at all familiar with JDI models, or JD models, or however you pronounce it, until I found this car on eBay. It was relatively well priced for a brand new diecast model, so that can either be a good thing or a disastrous thing. I decided to take the risk and get one, and just see what would arrive. So this is it, the JDI 143 BMW V12 Lmr. It has, as you can see, quite a large platform for displaying the model, with very easy to read writing. On the one hand, I really like that you can tell what you're looking at without needing to get too close. It's quite nice to be able to see what model you are looking at and what era it's from. On the other hand, would it be nice to have at least the driver names or something on the base? I am nitpicking, but it would have been nice. It has a weird plastic insert that makes the car look like it's floating. I mean, these are pretty common in diecast models, to have like a little insert between the base and the car itself. It kind of stabilizes the car. Some manufacturers make them a little bit bigger than others though. In some cases they're just like barely a centimeter. In the case of this one, it's about 3 or 4 centimeters. There's nothing really wrong with it. I just don't understand why they would choose to make them in a way that makes the car float. I think these models look better with their tires on the base, like they're on a racetrack. For this particular model, the plastic insert is needed to keep the car tightly secured to the base, so I decided to leave it in. It's either that or find a shorter screw, but I thought I'll just leave it in there, although I don't really like the look that much. In terms of quality, I'd give this Lmr 6.5 out of 10. The paintwork and the decals are pretty good. There's some very small flaws here and there in the white. The decals are pretty consistent, even the small ones. The construction does let it down a little though, with a very noticeable skew rear wing, at least when you view it from the rear. This seems to be more of an issue than I realized when I first started collecting this size. As I investigate more of these models, I am seeing a trend. I guess this is why those who can afford the more expensive Spark and Auto Art models choose to do so. You don't really encounter these problems with those models, although that's not guaranteed. Interior detail is about as good as you would expect from this size and price range. Not blown away, not disappointed, it's pretty much what I would expect. So for a brand new model, this is not bad. Considering where its price came in compared to the more expensive brands like Spark, it's good really. Remember that these models tend to be viewed from a small distance, and they're not meant to be analyzed with a camera lens like I am. Up until the morning I captured these photos, I was actually pretty impressed with the JDI model. To be honest, I'm a little less impressed now, although I think the quality is reflective of the price point. It might be good to find another JDI model at some point in the future and see if the workmanship remains similar. But overall, I'm happy with it, and I'm really glad I have a model of the Lmr on my wall. It's a piece of Le Mans history, and that makes it important to me.